When I was a student here at Case Western Reserve University, I wrote an English paper called Dad, This Isn't Like the Other Ideas. And the topic of this autobiographical short story is that as a kid, and then as a teenager, and it turns out also as an adult, I've had a lot of ideas. And I was always really, really passionate about those ideas. So for example, as a kid, my mom showed me this magazine article about building a space station for my Star Wars action figures. And building this was going to be the greatest accomplishment of my 5-year-old life. And if you look here, it might be hard to see, but this small part is made out of an empty 2-liter soda bottle. So I begged my mom, so in order to make preparations for my glorious space station, I begged my mom to go out and buy some soda. And I promptly drank 2 liters of soda in one sitting, and I rinsed out that soda bottle and hung on to it for weeks, if not months. So if you're ready to see the slide of my amazing space station, here it is. It turns out that rinsed empty soda bottle is pretty much as far as that idea was developed. My short story, Dad, This Isn't Like the Other Ideas, went on to highlight several other ideas, all of which I would be passionate about for days or weeks or months, but in the end, that's all they were, was ideas. So I share this partially because I feel it validates my decades of ideas right here, right now, as I stand on this stage, ready to share an idea worth spreading. So I can finally say and actually mean, Dad, this isn't like the other ideas. I'm giving a TED Talk on it. So, but back to playing in the Star Wars space station. There was one toy I played with as a kid that was particularly forgiving when it came to ideas, and that was Lego bricks. The most iconic sets from my childhood were the Lego space sets of the 1980s. And Lego was perfect for me because it gave me a chance to explore my ideas in ways that excited me. And I didn't even understand why it was back then, but I do now, some 40 years later. It's called hand knowledge. And hand knowledge can inspire ideas and break down barriers and connect people in ways that might surprise you. So this is going to be an interactive TED Talk, and if you look in your TEDxCWRU swag bag, you'll find a small plastic bag of Lego bricks. They gave us a little extra light here so you can see those. So I want you to take that out and open it up and empty the Lego bricks into your hand or onto your lap. I'll give you a few seconds. You'll see that you have 4 yellow bricks and 2 red plates, and one of the yellow bricks has a couple of eyes on it. So now I'm going to ask you to build something for me. And not just anything, specifically, I want you to build a duck. That's right, go ahead, build a duck. It's only 6 pieces, don't overthink it. I'll give you about 30 seconds. There's no need to look at your neighbor, just focus on your own pieces and build your own duck. All right, you have about 20 seconds left, no pressure. By the way, there's no wrong answer here. What's that saying? If it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. That applies here. If when you're done building, you say it's a duck, no one's going to argue with you. It's okay if it's sort of like a Picasso duck. That's all right. All right, let me hear if you need a few more seconds to finish your duck. All right, I'll give you, say, 7 more seconds. Okay, so if you can all do me a favor and everybody hold up their duck. So here's my duck. I've got it on the screen behind me too. All right? So you can look around at the ducks around you. So you might note, you'll note that your duck probably doesn't look like your neighbor's duck, or anyone else like the ducks in the rest of your row, or like anyone's in the rows in front of you or behind you. So there's a few reasons for your ducks all being different. The first reason is that I didn't show you a picture of a duck, and our minds work abstractly. So your brain is scrambling to remember the details of a duck. Are there wings? Do they fly? Is there a beak? No, I think it's a bill. Are there feet? Are they even called feet? Maybe claws? Now you would have had a completely different experience had I showed you a picture of a duck ahead of time. So here's a few famous ducks, some rubber ducks, and a couple of real ducks. But remember, no need to change your duck. Your duck is your own unique creation. I want you to own your duck. That duck you built is your own unique creation. The second reason your duck is unique has to do with this behind me. You'll see that I have 6 standard 2x4 Lego bricks on the screen. You can put together 6 Lego bricks in about 1 billion different combinations. So there are a lot of different ways you could have assembled your duck. We started with 6 bricks. And the chances of it being exactly like your neighbor's are pretty low. But third, and most importantly, everyone interprets information differently. And that's the key to the importance of play. Everyone can start with the same 6 Lego bricks and create something completely unique. Everyone has something valuable to contribute. So do me a favor and hang on to your duck exactly like it is. We're going to use it again later in this talk. But this first duck activity is just one example of how doing or playing can be much, much, much more effective than talking or meeting. So I have a little advice, and here's my advice. Stop having meetings, all right? Show me your hands if you've been to a boring meeting or a meeting that could have been an email in the last 2 weeks, right? All right, seriously, stop having meetings. They're slowly draining the life force from everyone. There's a reason that there's so many sitcom jokes and memes about boring, pointless meetings. In fact, here's a side-by-side. On the left, you'll see people in a meeting with a presentation, the way most meetings happen today, and they're leaning back and half asleep. On the right, you'll see people in a meeting using the LEGO Serious Play method, which I'll talk about in a minute. They're leaning in and completely engaged. I could go on and on about the plight of boring, pointless meetings, but instead, I explain it like this. Cavemen didn't invent the wheel by having a meeting about inventing the wheel, right? Think about it. My gut tells me that very few of history's biggest aha moments happened while people were sitting around with 8 other people staring at a presentation as someone droned on about it. We're much more effective when we do rather than talk about doing. And it turns out that playing, especially with Lego bricks, taps into the power of hand knowledge and unlocks our mind beyond our everyday thinking. So before I talk more about hand knowledge, I have a side note or maybe a bit of a confession to make. It actually turns out cavemen didn't invent the wheel. It was invented by Romans for chariots quite a while later. But let's not get into details and lose the big picture message of my historically inaccurate statement. I think this still holds, right? So what is hand knowledge? Our hands are connected to between 70 and 80% of our brain cells. We've all heard the notion that we all only use a small percentage of our brain. I don't know if that percentage you heard, whether it's 7 or 17 or 70% is true, but I'll tell you it is true. Our brains can only consciously process so much information at one time. It's what we call the working memory. And it turns out that playing, especially with Lego bricks, taps into the power of hand knowledge and unlocks our minds in ways beyond our everyday thinking. So I use Lego Serious Play to tap into the power of hand knowledge and get people thinking more creatively and more deeply about things. But before I talk about that, I want to cover a little bit more of the science, because a great deal of research university research went into the development of the Lego Serious Play method. This is a little hard for people to see in the back, but I'll talk you through it. So we already talked about hand knowledge up here. To the left, you'll see constructivism, constructionism, or I'm sorry, to your right, and the 3 imaginations. This has to do with the connection between building with our hands and the processes that take place in our mind and imagination that make building so powerful and meaningful. And in the lower left, you'll see flow theory. Flow has to do with the activity we're participating in being challenging enough that it holds our interest, but not so challenging that it gets us frustrated. And you'll find that the Lego Serious Play method is designed to keep us engaged and in flow. And one more thing that's important, and that's play versus work. Play is about process, whereas work is about the results. At work, you have a project, you reach a goal. New project, new goal. New project, new goal. Work, you're always about results. But when you play, it's always about the process. Remember playing as a kid. You didn't have an end goal in mind, you were just playing. It was all about the process. No goal needed. So when I give a workshop in the Lego Serious Play method, I usually start with building a duck, as you just did, but eventually we get on to building more complex models about maybe what you love about your job, or more or difficult things about your challenges you're facing at work. So this model here is from a corporate team building session where the team was brainstorming barriers in their team and amongst other teams and departments. And you can see here clearly the physical concept of a barrier that the employee was able to show, by building with Lego bricks. And here's the builds of 4 other people from that same session. Again, you can see how easy it is for each person to express their concept of a barrier, maybe easier than if they were just having a meeting about it. Here it's a door, there's a barricade, there's a walled enclosure, there's a narrow bridge. But my favorite build from this session is this one. And here, the participant built 4 barriers separating 4 departments that are represented by the 4 animals. But he took it a step further and actually figured out a solution by building a little playability into the model. If you simply flip the barriers over, all the departments have a seat at the table to discuss things, the way it should be amongst teams with a common goal. So again, amazing process is taking place. So the depth of introspection and the expression of the problem and solutions is simply way beyond what a manager could expect from having a traditional staff meeting or showing a presentation with stats and figures. So back to hand knowledge and why playing like this is so powerful. The LEGO Serious Play method taps into our ability to imagine. When our hands are used in learning, a complicated process takes place that unleashes a powerful emotional charge. So when we express thoughts and ideas by building them with our hands, they're expressed in greater detail, more easily remembered, and more easily understood by others. You've heard of the universal language of music. This is sort of like the universal language of Lego. Everyone gets it. It's amazing how the power of hand knowledge can augment your experience. So let's get out our ducks again, and we're going to sort of experiment with hand knowledge here. So I want you to take your duck. So everybody has their original duck. I want you to take your duck, and if needed, make changes so that your duck expresses your current mood. All right, so maybe your duck already expresses your mood if you look at it, but maybe you could change the eyes or the placement of the bricks or assemble part of it differently. Now, I'm forced to assume that all of you are experiencing some sort of euphoria as you're stunned by the interesting topic of LEGO Serious Play as I'm up here on stage. But it's possible that there's something else on your mind. Maybe you have to climb up the elephant stairs later in the freezing cold and you're dreading that. Or maybe you had a fight with your significant other or parents this morning and that's on your mind. Whatever it is, see if you can express it through your duck. All right, try to get your duck to express your current feelings. All right, so you can build for a few more seconds, but in a second I'm going to ask you to turn to your neighbor and tell them about your duck's mood. But I don't want you to just tell a story about your mood. In order to tap into hand knowledge, I want you to tell a story about your duck, about how the model of your duck looks and how that expresses your current feelings. All right? So everybody ready with their duck? Okay, so turn to your left or right and just share with your neighbor about your duck's mood. Don't be shy. If you can have the first person finish sharing and have the second person share about their duck. Again, I only have a few more minutes up here. So I hope everybody enjoyed sharing about their duck's mood. I actually also changed my duck. I have him in my other pocket here. And I actually made my duck with his mouth wide open and kind of freaking out because he's on stage giving a TED talk. So I may have used a few extra red bricks in the background, but you get the idea. So let's talk about what just happened. You just participated in storytelling and metaphor making. You told a story about your duck's mood, which is actually your mood. When we think through our fingers, we release creative energies that empower our imagination and emotions. Remember, all of us started with the same 6 Lego bricks. Then we each built a unique duck. Then we made some changes and made up a story completely out of the blue about our duck's mood or our mood. We, without even thinking about it, let this tiny pile of Lego bricks express our deepest, darkest emotions that we're feeling at this very moment. Okay, so maybe they weren't so deep and dark, but you did think about how you're feeling, and you did turn and express it to your neighbor, possibly a complete stranger. That's not something we readily do very often in society, but you just did it, all because we included a tiny bag of Lego bricks in your swag bags. So imagine what you could do if you had more time and more Lego bricks, say a few dozen or a few hundred, to build your answers to more complicated questions or prompts. Now, the models I showed you earlier were individual models from a corporate team building session. This model is a shared model. Shared models help a group reach consensus in a way that simply isn't possible with a conversation or presentation. And that's because they start here, as you see on the left, with individual models, which already contain their own thoughts and opinions. And then they combine them into a shared model, so it's almost impossible to lose someone's point of view. You physically put everyone's thoughts into that shared model. So here a group of school administrators are using LEGO Serious Play for strategic planning. And they've built this model to represent the school's mission and some of the challenges. And if you look at this part here, it's a couple figures crossing above a shark. And that was meant to represent the faculty dealing with difficult parents, right? But as they discussed it, they realized that the difficult parents were but a small subset of the population, and it was actually all the wonderful parents that made the school so successful. So they added this elephant to the model to represent the workhorse parents. Now the model's been rotated so you can still see they have the shark parents over here to the left. So again, this kind of thinking and the process involved in innovation and strategic planning is inherent in the activity of building and discussing. They simply wouldn't have achieved the same depth thanks to hand knowledge had they used a more traditional method of strategic planning. So earlier, I mentioned the notion that history's biggest aha moments probably didn't happen in a meeting. Likewise, your time with friends is probably more meaningful if you're actively doing something together rather than passively experiencing something. So I don't care if you use Lego bricks or Play-Doh or pipe cleaners or popsicle sticks or toothpicks or a board game or a deck of cards, but do something. You'll have a richer, more authentic time with friends if you say, play a game or a sport together rather than watch a movie. If you make dinner together rather than have dinner served to you at a restaurant. If you doodle or draw in your study group rather than stare at your laptops or phones. A lot of what I share today is the work of Robert Rasmussen and Per Christensen, the creators of LEGO Serious Play, and I owe them a debt of gratitude for their amazing work. Essentially, I get to play with Lego bricks for a living, and in the process, I get to unlock the knowledge of corporate teams and students in a whole variety of people. So in closing, I remind you that cavemen didn't invent the wheel by having a meeting about inventing the wheel. Stop meeting, start doing. Don't be passive. We can all use the power of hand knowledge to unlock our potential and discover and share the ideas that are hiding in the recesses of the human mind. Thank you, and thanks for playing.